Good morning. Welcome to New Life Church Online. I'm Pastor Jimmy. We're glad you're here. If you're tuning in on Facebook live stream, please leave a comment. Let us know you're here. If you're watching on YouTube later, don't forget to hit subscribe, and there's a little bell you can hit that'll notify you every time that we post a video on our page. I'm not going to open us up with a song this week because I really want to make this sort of a small chunk that we can share with others easily and nice and quick. And honestly, there are probably a million other sites where you can get some really good worship that's a lot better than what I might be playing. And so, welcome. We're going to get into it now. Before this whole social distancing thing and the COVID-19 and everything, we were in the book of Mark. We've been in the book of Mark for quite a while now, and I think it's important to get back into that. We're getting close to Easter, and we're working our way up there, and this actually is the story leading up to Easter, where Jesus was with his disciples. He was traveling with his disciples, heading towards Jerusalem. And last passage we covered in Mark was chapter 10, where Jesus was with his disciples heading to Jerusalem, and he knew full well that he was heading towards the crucifixion. And on the way, James and John got to talking, and they went to Jesus and they said, Jesus, we want you to do whatever it is we ask. And he said, what do you want me to do? And they asked to be put in a place of authority. They wanted to be at the right and left hand of Jesus. And Jesus talked to them, spoke to them, and said how it's not his place to assign that, but it's not a position that can be earned. You're not going to earn your way into an important position in heaven. And Jesus himself came to the earth to serve others. He came to be a servant to others, not to be served. He said that the last will be first, and that his job was to meet the needs of other people. And that's a really important thing on my heart, and we as the church need to be doing that. And once we're able to meet and gather again, we're going to figure out ways that we can serve this community and serve others for the Lord. So today we're going to get into Mark chapter 10, verses 46 through 52. And I'm just going to dive right in and start reading and then share some thoughts and observations. Then they came to Jericho. As Jesus and his disciples, together with a large crowd, were leaving the city, a blind man, Bartimaeus, which means son of Timaeus, was sitting by the roadside, begging. When he heard it was Jesus of Nazareth, he began to shout, Jesus, son of David, have mercy on me. Many rebuked him and told him to be quiet, but he shouted all the more, Son of David, have mercy on me. Jesus stopped and said, call him. So they called to the blind man, cheer up, on your feet, he is calling you. Throwing his cloak aside, he jumped to his feet and came to Jesus. What do you want me to do? Jesus asked him. The blind man said, Rabbi, I want to see. Go, said Jesus, your faith has healed you. Immediately he received his sight and followed Jesus along the road. I gotta take a time out real quick, check with my tech person. I forgot to put things where it was not on Wi-Fi, so please let me know if it says that it cuts out. And if you're there and watching, hopefully Cheryl has her phone with her? No, so we can't send a message. All right, well, we're just gonna go through it. Hopefully we don't have the tech issues we had last week. But Jesus was on the road and he went to Jericho. And as he was in Jericho, blind guy that I'm going to refer to as Bart from now on because it's just a lot easier, was there. And I've been studying this passage for several weeks now, because with things that happened and with changes and things, I did some extra studying and I've learned a whole lot. Read all kinds of stuff. I can break down the meanings of the words, the names, the all the subtext and everything like that. But I always ask the Lord, what are you teaching me here? And what do you want me to share? And in this passage, I learned three things, or I observed three things. And these are the things that I'm going to share with you today. First of all, Bart cried out. He heard that Jesus of Nazareth was coming through town. He heard, obviously there was a crowd happening, and there was noise, lots of people yelling, because Jesus attracted a crowd. As he passed through town, he would attract a crowd, people wanting to be healed, people wanting to touch, be near him. And Bart heard this, and he cried out. He cried out to God, to Jesus. And people told him to be quiet. He wasn't going to give up. Even when he was told to be quiet, he cried even more. He called out to Jesus. He turned it up another notch. He had heard the stories of Jesus, who he was, what he had been doing, the miracles he had done, and he made a connection. He had heard the prophecy, Isaiah 35:5 shares the prophecy of when the Messiah comes. He heard this. He knew this. It said, then will the eyes of the blind be opened and the ears of the deaf unstopped. He put two and two together. Jesus had been doing these things. He had been healing the blind people. He cared blind people. He cared about people like him. And he cried out because he knew this was the one. This was the Messiah. He knew it in his heart, so he cried for mercy. He knew he was undeserving. He was crying for mercy. He believed that Jesus was the Messiah, and this poor blind beggar had no right to ask for anything. What a difference between what we had just talked about with James and John, who thought they had earned their position. They had done the stuff that they needed to do, said all the right things, gone the right way, done everything that they're supposed to do, and earned a position. Like, we've earned this authority, Jesus. Reward us. Bart came recognizing the lordship of Jesus and that he had a need for the mercy of Jesus. So he cried out. And the cool thing was, in the middle of this chaotic scene, because like I said, there was probably hundreds, if not thousands of people gathering around Jesus, calling out to him. Bart was probably on the outskirts of stuff, where the beggar sat on the wall and called out for money. In the middle of this chaos, Jesus heard calling for mercy. I'm thinking it was either one of two things. Either Bart had a great set of pipes and a super loud booming voice, or that Jesus was tuned into the voice of those who earnestly cry out and he hears their needs. I believe it was the latter. I believe that Jesus hears when our hearts are crying out to him. And Jesus has compassion on the heart that cries out for mercy. It's interesting that in that previous passage, when Jesus talked about serving, I brought up how often we turn a blind eye to those that we don't want to serve or that we feel convicted to serve, and those people become invisible sometimes. We try to ignore everything and try to ignore our responsibility to serve. There's people that society deems as kind of the invisible people. Bart was one of those people that society was more comfortable just ignoring and looking past them as they walked down the road, trying to ignore, so they didn't have to put some money in his bag or whatever he had. And Jesus saw the hearts of people, and he saw to show these people something. Instead of just going to Bart, Jesus stopped and said, "Bring him to me." He showed the crowd, this person matters. These are the kind of people that I came to serve. I came to serve the people that are crying out for mercy. Bring Bart to me. That's compassion. This invisible guy that the world sees as invisible matters. I hear his cry. And when we recognize the lordship of Jesus and cry with our hearts, he hears us. And Jesus said, "What do you want me to do?" Same question he asked James and John previously. What do you want me to do? But here's where the heart makes a difference. James and John thought they had earned it. They deserved it. And Bart came humbly. He came to Jesus knowing he was undeserving. That's what mercy is. When God gives you something that you don't deserve, He came undeserving and recognized the lordship of Jesus and begged for mercy. And he answered him with respect. In verse 51, he said, I want to see. Notice, he didn't say, well, if it's your will, Lord, I would like to if you're able, and if it's not too much trouble, if you find the time to get over it. No, he said that Jesus could heal him. And Jesus did. We're going to get to that soon. But the second observation is that Bart left his cloak. He left behind his old life. Verse 50 almost seems like it's a throwaway verse. And so he left it, threw aside his cloak and went. But it's huge. Consider the state of a blind person in the day. They didn't have the advantages that we have today. I mean, it's still rough to be blind, I would imagine. I'm visually impaired, and it's rough sometimes. But back then, there was no Braille. There was no America's Disabilities Act. There was no Lighthouse for the Blind that could provide computers or different things and help them to find jobs so that they could earn their own money. They relied on donations from others. So the cloak that he had was something that was very valuable to him. This was something that he had probably saved up donations, saved up the contributions that people gave him for probably a considerable amount of time, and he got this to cover himself. And so he knew when he was leaving that cloak, when Jesus called him, he leapt to his feet and he booked to Jesus. He ran to Jesus. He had no intention of returning to his old life. He believed that Jesus was capable of healing him, but even if he didn't, he did not hold on to his old life. He knew that an encounter with Jesus was going to change his entire life. He didn't hang on to it just in case. He was confident. That's another lesson we can learn from Bart. Are we willing to leave our old lives, to commit to following in the footsteps of Jesus, no turning back? And I'll admit, it's often easier to hold on to that old life, hold on to that security. Yeah, I'll follow as long as it's convenient, but when things get tough, I'm probably going to go back to my old ways and start responding to adversity the way that I used to, and start talking the way I used to, start living the way I used to. As long as I don't have to give up too much, I'll follow Jesus. As long as I can still revisit the old way. Go back to gossiping when it's convenient. When I have a juicy tidbit, I can share it. When life gets real, life gets hard, I can go back to responding in anger. Or put my pride. If somebody puts me down, talks bad about me, I can speak up and boldly, because there's righteous indignation, right? Where Jesus turned over the tables in the temple, so I can get mad. No, we need to leave that old life behind, leave our cloak behind us, and commit a life of following in the footsteps of Jesus. And lastly, Bart went. Jesus said, your faith has healed you, now go. He didn't say, okay, you're healed, it's all good, now go sit in a pew for the next 67.5 years till I come back. Your faith healed you. Go. He wasn't dismissing Jesus like, okay, yeah, all right, you're healed, now I got other things to do, I'm on my way, see you later, peace out. He said, you are healed. Now do something with the gift that you have been given, the healing that you have received. Go, be a witness to the world. When he told Bart to go, what did he do? We read, he followed Jesus. Not only were Bart's physical eyes open, but his spiritual eyes saw it as well. Saw that there was something. Saw Jesus. Saw that he needed to serve and follow and learn from him and leave everything else behind. He devoted himself to a life of following and serving Jesus. Probably wasn't aware of the dangers that was facing Jesus, that he was headed to his crucifixion, but it didn't matter. He didn't worry about what could happen to him. He knew his life was changed by Jesus, and he lived in response to that. The blind guy saw more than many sighted people. We can learn so much from this short account. This guy, Bartimaeus, earnestly cried out to Jesus. He was willing to leave behind his old life and fearlessly follow Jesus. I often mention how I grew up in the church. Spent my whole life in church. Whenever the Truthfully, I didn't really grow up. I don't think I ever grew up. But I spent time in the church, yes. But I was one of those that was a Sunday morning Christian, or Sunday morning, Monday night Awana, and the rest of the week was a life of duplicity. I would get some words I'd hear a message sometimes, because usually I was busy talking or passing notes, but I'd hear things, and after they hit my ears, basically they went in one ear, out the other, and the rest of my week was living for myself, doing my own thing. I was not following in the footsteps of Jesus. And it did not work well for me. When I stopped morning believer and started to follow in the footsteps of Jesus, seek the footsteps of Jesus, learn about Jesus, my life changed. That's why I do this. That's why I'm here today. That's why I want quick 10-minute or so messages that you can share with others to show what it means to follow Jesus. This old life, it's not satisfying to me. Jesus said if we confess with our mouth, Paul said that if we confess with our mouth that Jesus is Lord and believe in our hearts that God raised him from the dead, we will be saved. Now, that saved is great. Believe me, I love knowing that I'm not going to face an eternity in hell because I've made Jesus my Lord. But the cool thing is, in the middle of all this, in the middle of these struggles, in the middle of this uncertain time, I know that I have God with me. I have Jesus that I can turn to in these times. I can turn off the TV, turn off the radio, stop hearing all this stuff that's going on, and turn to the Lord. Our verse of the week this week comes from John 1:5. It says, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness can never extinguish it. That light is Jesus. If you don't know Jesus today, today is the day that you can. I welcome you to pray. Just simply talk to him. It's as simple as this. God, I recognize my need for you. I recognize that without you I'm lost, and my eternal destiny damned. And I know that right now, in the middle of all this, in the middle of this situation in the world, I need you to guide me, to strengthen me, to comfort me, to lead me. And Lord, today I give my heart, my life to you. I commit myself to becoming a new creation in you. In Jesus' name, amen. God bless you. Please feel free to share this with everyone and anyone. And our info is here, 815-375-4115, or newliferochelle@gmail.com if you want to continue the conversation. If you have questions, anything, you can reach us on our social media. And I am praying for you.